Hello, true believers, and welcome to another edition of BK's Bullets. My name is not Brent Casina. My name is Jim Mafanis, and from time to time, Brent asks me to review comic books for you. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at the critically overlooked comic that I absolutely loved, Batman Year 100. Now, why do I say that Batman Year 100 is overlooked? Well, typically when I review these comics, I like to go online. I like to watch YouTube videos of other people talking about them. I like to look at blog posts discussing it. And for whatever reason, Batman Year 100 does not get the love of some of the other great Batman stories. I think Dark Knight Returns is absolutely phenomenal. I think Batman Year One, absolutely phenomenal. But for whatever reason, a lot of people aren't talking about Batman Year 100. And I get it. It didn't just come out today. Some of these are a little bit older stories, but it's so good. And I think it honestly rivals Batman The Dark Knight Returns for me, at least in art style, not totally in story. But as you guys know, I love The Dark Knight Returns, and I think this is the closest representation to that I've seen yet. I highly recommend you check this comic book out. I'm going to be getting into some spoilers, not necessarily note for note, panel for panel, but if you haven't yet read this story, do yourself a favor, subscribe to this channel, and save it for later because I don't want to ruin this for you, and I think you absolutely need to read it on your own. What Batman Year 100 tries to do, and I think it does a phenomenal job, is building up the lore of the Batman. Who actually is Batman? And in this story, we never find out. And honestly, it's better for that. I know that Batman is Bruce Wayne is the current Batman. There were some periods of time in there where other people took up the cowl for various reasons. But the symbol of what Batman was has always been this dark, brooding, mysterious figure that instills terror into his victims and yet somehow finds a way to keep his precious Gotham City safe from all the evil crimes and all the evil villains that want to make a name in his city. And this book talks a lot about what happens in a weird dystopian future in which there still is a Batman running around and still up to his normal vigilantism or justice-like maneuvers and the things that he does. How is he going to deal with the future and a really police military type state that must know and track everything you do? Think along the lines of like Minority Report. How are they going to handle a guy who runs around, who's nameless and faceless, doing his best to, one, expose these villains, and two, expose the police that is kind of in its own way up to no good. There are some phenomenal visuals in this, and I've never heard of Paul Pope before, but I'm telling you now, he is one of my, if not my absolute favorite artists. He draws in an extremely sketchy style. And I don't mean sketchy like skeevy or weird. I mean that it's a very, very dirty style of art. It has an excessive amount of motion and fluidity to it. And it also does not respect the rules of proportion or of any sort of draw distances or any type of like golden triangle type things that you normally see in comic books. His characters often look deformed. His characters are often not visualized very well in terms of their art. Their faces are protruding outside of their helmets. They're bulging. Their hands and legs are larger than they need to be. But it's done to convey emotion, and it's done to convey action. And it works very well for this comic book because the entire comic book is really centered on a significant amount of action. The book starts with Batman being chased by the Wolves. The Wolves are actually the Gotham City Police Department and this adjoining oversight of this federal police force, kind of mixed group together. These guys wear football jerseys that say Wolves on them, and they hunt and they play like professional athletes would. There is no authority here. There are no well-dressed police officers living by any kind of codes of conduct or any side of formal rules. These guys are basically an organized gang, something you would see out of Mad Max, who was given an incredible responsibility that really went right to their heads and really did change a lot of how they interact with the civilians in Gotham City. They're chasing Batman because Batman is an unknown. In this universe, everybody is known. There are cameras everywhere. There are police presence everywhere. You can't think or do anything without somebody knowing about it. And yet you have a guy running around, an unknown, running around in a bat cape, dressed like a bat, fighting crime, doing his own thing, and this military state just does not like it. The art style, as I mentioned, really plays well into this. There are some really brutal fight scenes early on with Batman really fighting very rigorously. There's a lot of hard punches and knees and elbows and just really like very violent, explosive comic panels, page after page of Batman really grittily fighting, huffing and puffing, jumping across rooftops, chased by dogs, chased by drones, chased by these soldiers wearing these, hockey football jerseys, and they are out to get this guy. Along the whole journey, Batman does have a small coalition of people helping him. He has Robin. He has, I believe, who's supposed to be the modern day Oracle. What makes this so interesting is it's called Batman Year 100 because it's in the future. It's 100 years after the origination of Batman. So it's like 2039 in this comic book, which surprisingly is only 19 years from now, if that doesn't make you feel old. But clearly, the Bruce Wayne that we know could not be 100 years old, still living like this. So who is this mysterious person? We don't find out. It is just somebody who has decided to take up the calling and the mantle and continuing to fight in the name of, the whole truth and justice. And I get it, it's a Superman thing, but you understand my point. What's really cool about this Batman is that he's got a gadget that makes sense for every situation he's in, and sometimes it doesn't. We're led into this weird future where he has this kind of weird reverse paracord that he pulls and it launches him up in the air very rapidly. He has some sort of laser whip that he uses a couple times, and he's got these really cool set of teeth that he puts in, and it makes him look like a vampire sort of, that's used to strike fear in his enemies. And it's really cool to see such a feral Batman. I think there might have been a play on words there with the wolves, because Batman definitely acts like a lone wolf, and he's a violent beast who's out for justice and fighting and clawing his way through page after page of fights and gritty detective work, trying to understand the mysteries of what's going on in this city. And it ultimately stems with a virus and some major police corruption that he has to kind of work through. We're also introduced to Jim Gordon's great-grandson, who finds and stumbles across his grandfather's laptop, which does contain information on the original Batman, the original Bruce Wayne. He definitely plays a large point in this because he is also, in his own way, a vigilante trying to help out Batman as opposed to kind of falling in line with this police state. He gets roughed up quite a bit throughout the comic, and he has his own arc. He has his own motives of redemption, of why he's doing what he's doing, because he feels betrayed by this organization who has wronged him in the past, which they touch a little bit on in the comic. Overall, I think the read was very, very simple, but very, very efficient at what it was trying to convey. If there's anything I can criticize about the comic book, it's definitely not the art style. I think it's that it tried to do a little bit too much in a short amount of time. This is only this is one trade that's 4 comic books merged into one. I would have liked to see a little bit more fleshed out, particularly with the military oversight. There are some villains that are introduced early on that are like these elite agents that are sent to hunt and track down Batman that I think would have been nice if we saw a little bit more backstory on them. Maybe it would have made their confrontation with Batman just a little bit more meaningful. I like that they kind of skirt around who Batman is. You never see him not wearing a mask. You always see him in costume or in the shadows. If he is ever like not in costume, you never see his face. I like that they don't really address him as anything other than Batman, and I don't think they need to. I think the spirit is alive and well with this comic. So what speaks to me so much about this comic, the reason I love The Dark Knight Returns, the reason I love Batman Year One, and the reason I love Batman Year 100 is it speaks to this greater sense of urgency and this calling, which is what makes a common man dress up and go out and fight against insurmountable odds time and time again. I love that he has this calling to be something greater than he is just as a man, that he puts on this costume, that he really puts himself out there in harm's way in order to do the right thing, even when the right thing is the hard thing to do. So I highly recommend this comic book. It definitely rates up there for me in terms of phenomenal, phenomenal art. I think the story, which although is a little rushed in some places, I think ultimately serves a great job. And I would love to see more of this. I would love to see more of these stories of a future that doesn't necessarily want or maybe even need a Batman, yet he exists, yet he continues to fight because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's a really cool kind of feel-good book in a sense, but it's wrapped in this really, really aggressive art style that has a lot of dark undertones to it. Maybe that's why people didn't embrace it as much as they think they should, but I highly recommend it. It is Batman Year 100. Do yourself a favor, check this out. Comment on this video, subscribe to Brent's channel. He's always doing phenomenal things. Hope you guys enjoyed my take on this comic. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the funny pages.